Our next speaker, we have Garima Bajpai, co-creator, continuous product-oriented practice from Capital Carbon Consulting. With a history of leading strategic change initiatives to address key business opportunities connected to digital transformation with organizations like Ericsson and Tech Mahindra, Garima is an experienced professional and entrepreneur, DevOps ambassador, speaker, blogger, and a strategist. She's also the founder for DevOps Community of Practice in Canada. She has been recognized as DevOps Fusion's Woman in DevOps 2021. Her topic for today is DevOps to Data Ops.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DevOps India Summit. First of all, I would like to thank you all for coming together for this excellent event. Before I start my session, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Garima Bajpai, industry speaker, digital twin, AI ops, and DevOps, founder of Canada DevOps Community of Practice, co-organizer for DevOps Summit Canada, chief ambassador for the Continuous Delivery Foundation, and ambassador with DevOps Institute. My today's call to action is data ops. And I would like to build some perspective around this topic. My social handles are there at the bottom. If you want to connect with me and network with me on this topic, please feel free. So let's get this going. So my topic for today is DevOps to Data Ops. This talk reflects the collective thought of several community members of DevOps Community of Practice here in Canada. We had approached this topic through several different perspectives and through crowdsourced events. And we have crowdsourced these findings. Our initiatives includes crowdsourced chats, panel discussions, one-on-one sessions, gamification events. This talk is based on the 5 principles of our community, where we all motivate each other to learn and grow. We foster long-term collaboration through several unique ways, some of them being gamification, experiential learning, and we are committed to be inclusive. This helps us people to motivate and cross over towards functional boundaries and build more perspective around difficult topics like data ops. So let's get this going. My today's agenda would be taking the grassroots journey of data ops, talking about steering in the data innovation portfolio, how it would look like, data ops, defining it earlier, unique key learnings from DevOps, where we can find synergies and what is different, data ops methodologies, state of art practices, data ops people and communities. And lastly, I'll reflect some thoughts around data to value. Obviously, it's a lot to cover in one topic, so I would cruise through some of these sections, but we will be having some room for Q&A. If you would like to build some more perspective, feel free at the end of the topic. So let's move forward. From a grassroots journey perspective, I would say let's look back at the history. And I was doing some research around data ops, and I found some interesting facts. 85% of big data projects fall, according to Gartner report in 2017. History reminds us that 87% of data science projects never make it to production, according to VentureBeat, a report produced in 2019. And through 2022, only 20% of analytics insight will deliver business outcome. So research organizations have found that leading causes of big data project failures include factors like wrong, inadequate skills, incorrect business objectives, data management issues, technology complexities, improper scope, management and cultural resistance, and inadequate governance, to name a few. Now, it sounds quite familiar to our community of DevOps practitioners and leaders, right? We have seen similar pattern when we were trying to evolve and adopt into DevOps. right? So let's talk about today. And let's focus on recent research and findings and what is in store for us post COVID, as per the experts. By 2030, 2023, data literacy will become an explicit and necessary driver of business value and demonstrated by its formal inclusion in over 80% of data and analytics strategies and change management programs. It's a big number. And it is evident that consensus is building up that digitization and driving business outcome through this digitization needs to have a data driven approach. A new age of data driven technologies are defining the course of modern businesses, as well as research and investment into data alone has become the new normal. If we fast track and imagine the next decade, it will be dominated by mesh of digital products and services tightly integrated. As we scale up this investment in this direction, organizations realize that investment into acquiring data would not lead them to the right outcome. There is a need to focus on a multi-step strategy, creating more synergies with DevOps. And let's explore further the strategy and the roadmap to guide our action towards DevOps. Okay, so let's talk about data and data science initiatives. And when we do so, new vocabulary is emerging and guiding us to the operating framework for data. Let's take a quick look at the ops mesh, which will help us take an overall balanced approach for an operating model. Now, there's several ops vocabulary which is emerging as we speak. So I will highlight and touch base upon few of them before even indulging and going into data ops. So I'll talk about data SecOps. Data SecOps is an evolution in a way organization treats security as a part of their data operations. And it is an understanding that security should be continuous part of the data operation processes and not something that is on the side or added after as an afterthought. It works on a similar principle, and CALMS has been guiding us through collaboration, lean, automation, sharing, and making it measurable. There's another keyword which is building up, and people are talking about MLOps. So, to simplify this conversation, ML or machine learning to me is code plus data. So when we talk about MLOps, it is a set of practices that aims to deploy and maintain machine learning models in production reliably and efficiently. And this consists of tracking the models and the metadata, validation of it, deployment and monitoring of the machine learning capabilities, and making it continuous. MLOps enables data scientists and the IT professionals to collaborate and communicate while automating the machine learning processes. Taking one step further, I would also like to discuss model ops. And some people say model ops is evolution of ML ops. Model ops orchestrate the model life cycle of all models in production across the entire enterprise. From putting a model into production, then evaluating, updating the resulting application according to a set of governance rules, including both technical and business KPIs. And lastly, I'll talk about XOps. This term has been primarily emerging through Gartner, where they have reflected combined practices of DevOps, Data Ops, ML Ops, Model Ops, AI Ops, Platform Ops for AI, and converge them into a set of findings and practices. Now, moving ahead, when we talk about topic, the key topic of the day, data ops, let's reflect on that. And it is essential and important that we define it early. From my perspective, data ops is defined as a combination of data and engineering practices. It is not premature to say that it is the first step towards a new operating model for organizations who are looking at value of data. And I would like to quote, according to Gartner, by 2022, 30% of chief data officers or CDOs will partner with their CFOs to formally value the organization's information assets for improved information management and benefits around it. And when we talk about all this and the perspective building around data, it's not hard for us to understand that what bad data could cost, how much data is siloed, what capabilities and governance models we have around data, how much data is not trustworthy or misaligned with your business outcomes. And this reflects that we need a systematic thinking around data ops, which includes these five aspects primarily: data quality management, data flow management, data integration, data security, and data governance. Before moving ahead in this topic, I would like to quote that without a systematic way to start and keep data clean, bad data will happen. So, from a strategic perspective, let's take a top down deep dive into how to springboard data. And with this, actually, taking a one step further into data ops, and I often call it as strategy to springboard data because at the Canada DevOps Community of Practice, we initiated several collaborative events and even created a white paper on this topic. Data ops to us is a new operating model and it requires a multi step transformation. I would outline this transformation in a four-step process, and I would like to highlight the first and the foremost aspect, that's the strategic aspect, creating the data culture. Now, when you think about for this, we need to establish limits as well as build framework to ensure our actions are coordinated and also ethical. Knowledge communities have to be established, and we need to have proper practices, steer adoption of right behaviors in order to ensure we create the right kind of data culture. We need to have a clear focus on error budgets, pushing the boundaries of our products into a new form of collaboration with data and human qualities. And taking the learning from DevOps, it's not an easy job. It's the most strategic component of this operating model, which is emerging. Now, talking about tactical aspects, data coordinates. Data exists in network, and that's the reason why we are talking about data coordinates here. Integrated with various systems. One system's data waste is the raw material for the next product. And if we track the coordinates and reduce the data ownership issues, we would be able to support a more trustworthy baseline for our data driven digital ecosystem. Development of robust platforms embedded with real time exchange of data sets, tracking ownership and data licenses. Further, monitoring the usage and management of data can help us bridge that distribution gap for small and medium enterprises in a fair way. I'll talk about operational aspects as well, supply chain efficiencies, and creating an accountability around data with the roles, responsibility, and access management is essential. It also requires defining policies, guidelines for data usage, enabling us to inline a broader perspective and maintain compliance and security of data assets. Also, the production and the consumption of data needs to be balanced, reducing the possibility of waste, nurturing the new generation of practices focused on data preparation, usage, validation, versioning, monitoring, and to a certain extent, maintaining that data lifecycle. Talking about the last aspect, the financial aspect, and one of the most important one, data capital. And when we talk about data capital, monetization of data, it will only happen with accountability and elevating awareness. The ecosystem around data needs to create value rather than looking at it in a fragmented manner. One essential part is to look at the business model and integrate it in the ecosystem. And to leverage that data capital, we have to start from the base of the pyramid. Building that awareness, education, and elevating it to an extent that we reach to the second layer where we build vocabularies to communicate in the ecosystem before even looking at monetization. So, having talked about the top down approach from where an operating model perspective, data ops can be seen from a bird's eye view, we would like to also reflect a few key aspects about steering the data innovation portfolio. And when we talk about organizations which are looking at a data innovation portfolio, we also need to have a toolkit that steers this operating model for data ops. Otherwise, it becomes a very academic exercise, and it also is very abstract at a very, very high level. So, how the toolkit would look like when we talk about the operating model for data ops? We can establish this toolkit through taking a structured approach towards our investment into data and tracking the returns through the portfolio. So, the data innovation portfolio has to be holistic, should be considered with all aspects of our innovation and return, and it has to be visible. Now, steering this lean portfolio requires to consider five key areas. First of all, data itself. Although data is an integral part of data ops, but it has its own characteristics. Data produced needs systematic thinking, analysis, cleansing, transformation, visualization. The roles. We also kind of need to consider a disciplined approach towards onboarding specific roles, starting from CDOs, data managers, analysts, scientists, data engineers, and considering team topologies is important. We'll have to have a structured approach to assess in the beginning by embedding these roles either into an existing team or creating a separate team focused on data ops. It will mature with time as there is no one size fit all. But it's also important to address three more factors: how we iterate, test, and improve. Everyday reality will require a robust data pipeline that can manifest results incrementally. Data ops will require teams to come together actively more often to create consistent tool chain. And also, the last but not the least, data storage. How do we separate ourselves from data hoarders? Right? It's a very important aspect of data ops, and we need to kind of have a strategy to focus on that aspect. Now, taking the discussion one step further, what are the key learnings from DevOps experts? As we cruise into this discussion, one obvious question is what data ops can learn from DevOps, right? It's important to discuss synergies and differences, and synergies being deliver value incrementally, identifying the low hanging fruits, think of process acting on data, also continuous development and deployment, and the notion of observability. Now, coming to the differences, and this is something which we had discussed in the Canada DevOps community of practice with Chris Berg, a CEO of Data Kitchen, and he helped us build this perspective that there are certain tangible differences when we talk about data ops. We have different people. Any a large change starts with people, and data ops brings opportunities for diverse set of people, role, skill set. So careful assessment is needed for upskilling and collaboration. Data ops is many to many. What that means is that data is an essential ingredient for a wide variety of opportunities, which are closely linked and mutually reinforcing. A mesh of functional and cross-functional teams are required to ensure that we succeed in our data ops projects. Now, when we talk about data ops, it also has additional complexity. Many teams produce more data than they can consume, and it leads to additional complexity. Lastly, I would like to reflect two more aspects that data ops requires continuous sandboxing and not everything goes to production. So data itself cannot be considered for any effective outcome. It requires combination of stakeholders to come together and produce useful insights. So having kind of understood the differences in terms of where we can build synergies with DevOps and what are the differences, it takes us one step closer to the key challenges in steering data ops. And as we have already realized, there is a spectrum of opportunities, but it takes forever to create new value. And when it comes to data, it's even more difficult, right? So we also have to continuously improve the asset base with a view that data has a shelf life, but it lives forever. And this was something which we discussed in our community of practice, a panel discussion with one of our known DevOps leaders, Gautam Palapa. So the question at hand today is, what methodologies are available and is it enough for current demand? So let's dig deeper into this discussion and topic and take this one step further. So when we talk about state of art data practices, what it means, and I would like to say that more work is clearly needed to set up that state of art practices for data ops, focusing on agility, observability, system of data, and data pipeline. And before we actually move further, I would like to uh, talk about the data ops practices in a little more detail. So, when we talk about data agility, it is about how fast and frequently we can convert data into value, right? So, how would we do that? Coming from a DevOps background, I would say start with minimum requirements, anticipate that change and iterate more often, automate as much as possible, separate the logical, analytical, and the data storage. Use the right tools for the job, know all of your data sources, and capture everything, including historical changes. Obviously, these kind of factors which I am talking about, I have researched this topic and I've come across these key findings. Now, talking about data observability, and when we talk about data observability, it shares the same core principles as application observability, health of your data systems. That's what we are talking about. And lastly, I would like to reflect systems of data has to be user friendly, reliable, scalable, secure, and maintainable. Looks like an easy job, right? Coming from the DevOps background, you can realize that how much work would be needed to ensure that we have that operating model what we are talking about, right? So let's focus on one aspect which is the most critical aspect, and I left it to one of the latest slides just because it needs to have a focused approach. We need to steer capabilities, skills, and roles into the data ops context. And what we need to steer strategic, operational, and financial ownership. When we talk about like roles like chief data officer, we this chief data officer would need support from data managers, portfolio owners to set strategic priorities, roadmap, and data quality matrices. The CDO also will have to work with the business stakeholders from various units to ensure that sponsorship for data projects is there. Also, return of investment is clearly outlined. Now, when we talk about this handshake of return of investment, it clearly focus on how we would collaborate within the teams and outside the teams, and how the CFO and the CDO would handshake this information, right? So there is clearly a cross functional collaboration building up with a lot of focus on financial steering, investment, and sponsorships, but also the focus on roles like data analysts, scientists who would continually experiment and steer that innovation pipeline for you, and bringing newer insights for products is also extremely important. Lastly, I'll talk about data ops engineers, which will help build reliability and a cost conscious approach towards the entire portfolio. So, all these roles, definitions, they're still in making, and organizations are steering this either from a more focused perspective or embedding these roles in different teams and building that cross functional collaboration. We have a lot of work to do in this dimension. So I believe that this area would build up as we go along. Now, concluding my talk, I would like to actually highlight the last aspect of transforming data to value. And Some of these thought-provoking questions which I have for you today is, what if data is available on demand as an open platform for co-innovation? This is not new. Open data has existed for long. But the question at hand today is, building an ethically sourced database culture is a long-term commitment and will require all of us to accept the constraints. Data innovation and data governance must develop side by side in order for businesses to acquire pertinent data, information that is also non threatening to the users. So, having said that, I will also quote that I built some community perspective around the stock, and I got some very good ideas from the community. I would like to quote one of the ideas which were posted on my LinkedIn profile, that how about using blockchain for digital signing of data sets? And this was by Carol. So I actually researched this statement, and I truly believe that this is something which will create a larger perspective as we go along. By 2023, I found out that up to 30% of world news and video content will be authenticated as real by blockchain technologies. And this was something which was predicted by Gartner. So, where will everyday AI services originate from? Who and how it will be delivered is still a question to ponder upon. And I would say it starts all here. It's an exciting era, excellent platform for all of us. DevOps India Summit. Thank you for being here and listening to me. And with that, I would like to sign off for today and enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you very much for this opportunity.